What's up, guys? Welcome to my channel where I share with you guys strange and mysterious stories. So today I'm gonna be sharing with you guys a story about a guy who died and actually attended his own funeral. This story is both sad, scary, and very deep and dark. And that's not even the fact that this guy died and attended his own funeral is not even the messed up part. The messed up part is that the people who put him in that situation are his family members. Yeah, believe it. This reminds me of this old saying, Lord, protect me from my family and friends. My enemies I can handle. Because when it comes from family and friends, you just never expect it. But from an enemy, it's what you expect from an enemy. But from friends and family, you don't expect it, and that's why it hurts. So yeah, before I get into the story, I feel like I should explain something for people that have been following this channel for some time. You may have noticed that the name has changed. This channel used to be Bolobedu Strange Things, where I shared strange things from all over Bolobedu. But then, as you may have noticed, I shared my WhatsApp numbers on the channel's description, urging people to share their stories on my WhatsApp. So ever since I put my numbers there, I've been receiving stories from all over, not just Bolobedu. So that's why I opted to changing the channel's name to my name. So it is now Storyteller Clement, and I will be sharing stories from all over, not just Bolobedu. So the channel is no longer limited. Yeah. So back to it. Let me tell you about this guy who died and attended his own funeral, how it came to be and what exactly happened. I received the story from my WhatsApp line, and the person who sent it urged me to share the story on my YouTube channel just to raise awareness, so that people can know that these things are happening, so that people can pray more and consult and whatever spiritual path that you follow, just so that people can cling on to it and do it as often as they can. So yeah, this dude, he was 22 years old. He was a scholar at the University of KwaZulu-Natal, but he was originally from Mpumalanga. Yeah. So he was studying physiotherapy. So I guess he was studying towards being a physiotherapist. For those that don't know, physiotherapists are those ones that I think you get to work with sportsmen, like, soccer players or whatever, any sport you can think of, rugby, cricket, those guys that help you get in shape, physically in shape. Or if you get into an accident and then you can't really walk right, those guys, they can help you to get in shape. It's like they teach you from scratch how to walk right or whatever, how to do anything, everything right physically. So this guy, he was a scholar at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. He decided to go home, Mpumalanga, to visit his family. He was the first one to ever get to university in his family. And by his family, I'm not just talking about his mother's and father's house, like his family, like from grandfather, cousins, and whatnot. He was the first one in the village, his family, to actually make it to varsity. So there he is, his home, Mpumalanga, and he went out with his uncle to get some drinks. So on their way back home from wherever they were getting the drinks, they bump into a guy out of nowhere. Actually, this guy just comes out of nowhere, stabs the guy 7 times. There he is on the ground, in a pool of his own blood. clinging on to dear life. And then finally he passed on. Okay, he's dead now. He doesn't know how or when. But then he wakes up. His grandmother wakes him up and says, "Wake up, it's time to go." Okay, he's awake. He's confused. He doesn't really understand what's going on because there's a whole lot of people where he is. His brothers, his sisters, his cousins, basically the villagers, everyone is just there, and including the police. His mother is on the floor crying frantically right next to his body. She's busy yelling, "Oh, my son, no, he can't die, he can't die." Seeing his mother crying, he's looking at her. He also starts crying and he wants to talk, but then there's no voice. Nothing comes out, only tears rolling down his face. And then his grandmother insists it's time to go. She takes him by the hand. They go off to his grandmother's place. They get there. She gives him water. He sleeps. Okay, he wakes up. He finds himself in his grandmother's room. He tries to get out the room, but he can't even get himself to open the door. He can't open the door. He feels somebody coming. It's his aunt. Something just urges him to hide. Okay, he hides. His aunt comes into the room. She does whatever she was doing, getting whatever she was getting in the room. She leaves. She leaves the door open. Okay, here's the opportunity for him to get out. He can actually just walk out, right? But no, he tries to leave, but he can't leave. It's like, I don't know, something's got some kind of a hold on him. He can't leave the room. The door is wide open, but he still can't get out. It's like he's not even in control of his own body. So at this point, he starts crying and screaming. As he's crying and screaming, with frustration, confusion, he sees his father who died when he was 17 years old, which is like about 6 years back. Okay, he's shocked, still crying and screaming. Then boom, he sees his sister, who's a mess just like his father. At this point, his father is just standing there looking at him. He can't speak. He's just looking at his son, tears rolling down his face. The guy is still screaming, crying and kicking because at this point he's thinking he's looking at ghosts. He's seeing ghosts, not knowing he's a ghost himself, I guess. He's not really clear on everything of what's going on. As he's still crying and screaming, a short hairy man comes into the room, starts beating up the guy, beating up the guy, beating up the guy. After a while of this beating, his grandmother comes into the room. And that's when the beating stops. And the grandmother says to the boy, "Don't act smart. Just because you went to varsity, it doesn't mean you know about life." So you see where the root of the problem is. The problem is jealousy. The fact that the kid made it to varsity didn't really sit well with the grandmother and whoever else is involved in the story, as you will learn as I continue with the story. After those words, she grabs the boy by the hand. She leads him to the garage. In the garage, she takes off his clothes. She covers him with something. He didn't really go into detail as to what did they cover him with. I'm not really sure what it could be. And then he was given some kind of a rope, and the granny just walked out. And as the granny walked out, the boy just followed it. It's like as if something was compelling him to like follow the granny. There they go, out with the granny. They go to the boy's place. At his place, he sees there's a whole lot of people, confused. What's going on? He doesn't get it. Only to learn that it's a funeral. It's his funeral. Okay. There they are, even at the cemetery, there he is. They're burying him, but yet he's there with his grandmother. He's right next to his grandmother. And as they're burying him, he's watching his mother, his family members, everyone, they're crying over him. He can't help it but also cry himself. Because obviously nobody wants to see their mother cry. After the funeral, they head on back home. When they get home, the grandmother doesn't take him to her room like before. She takes him to the garage. In the garage, there at the corner, he finds that his father is there at the corner, and his sister, the one who doesn't seem to recognize him, and a whole lot of a bunch of other people he doesn't even recognize. So I guess this granny has been collecting souls or collecting people or whatever, because some of these people, actually all of these people, he doesn't recognize. He only recognizes his father and his sister. Okay, he's there at the garage. The short hairy man shows up again and then shoves him at the corner along with the others. He's there at the corner, and then his father just starts brushing his head in a weird manner, you know. He described it as the way monkeys groom each other. Okay, as that was going on, his aunt comes in with a bucket full of pap. She just throws the pap on the floor, and everyone rushes towards the pap and starts eating from the floor, including his father. And then his father would take some of the pap. Okay, before his father started, while everyone was eating, actually, the aunt looked onto the boy and said, "You better start eating as well, because you haven't eaten in like 6 days, or else you're gonna die like a dog." Okay, he moved towards the pap on the floor, and then his father started tossing some of the pap towards him so that he could eat, which he did. They ate. Okay. Later that evening, they're still in the garage. The granny comes into the garage with the aunt. They are both not wearing anything. They're just bucket, you know. They're wearing nada, silch. Okay. The guy says he couldn't even look at them, you know. So they come in with the shorty head man, the short hairy man. Sorry about that. So the short dude, he turns into a gorilla. This short hairy man turns into a gorilla, and the granny, who's not wearing anything by the way, climbs on top of the gorilla, and the aunt climbs on top of one of the men in the garage, and they all go out, including his father and his sister. So he's left alone in the garage, right? Mind you, this is his grandmother's house, so he's familiar with it. He knows where everything is. So he walks around the house. He even prepares a meal for himself and eats. So his grandmother and the rest of the crew, they come back into the garage. The short hairy man, who's at this point a gorilla, turns back into his normal short hairy size. So they get home. His aunt's kids tell the aunt that their mom, that something weird is going on in the house. There's somebody who was walking around the house and even cooking in the house and coming into our rooms. We were so scared. I assume the kids are not aware of their mother's extra activities, you know. So the angry aunt tells the granny about this, and the granny who also gets pissed at this point because she told the grandson not to act smart. She instructs the short hairy man to discipline the guy. Okay. As instructed by the granny, the short hairy man beats up the guy. Beat him up, beat him up, beat him up, beat him up. Brrr. It was bad, apparently, the way he was beat up. He was beat up to a point that when the aunt came with pap, in the bucket as usual. He couldn't even eat due to the injuries. Okay, so the next evening, right? Same thing happens. The granny comes into the garage naked. The short hairy dude turns into a gorilla. She gets on top of the gorilla. The aunt gets on top of one of the men in the garage. They all go out. Uh, the boy is left alone in the garage. So this time he decides he has to find his way home. He gets out of his grandmother's home. Mind you, he should know his way home, because when he was alive, he knew his way home from his grandmother's house, or his way to his grandmother's house from home. But for some reason, he kept getting lost. He couldn't even understand why. He just kept getting lost. He couldn't find home. It's like he was suffering from amnesia or something, or he doesn't really know how to describe it himself. So along his attempts to get home, he would hear people coming or see people coming, but instead of talking to them, something would just tell him to hide. So he would just print and hide. This kept going for some time. He's been attempting to get home for some time, but then he just kept getting lost. Until he decided that he's no longer gonna hide. Whenever he sees people, he's gonna ask for help instead. Okay, fine. The first night he decided that he's not gonna hide anymore. He's gonna ask for help from people. He goes out. He sees one drunk man coming, and then he realizes that he recognized this dude. He decides to ask for help from this drunk dude. The drunk dude screamed because this guy is dead. You know, it's a reflex thing. Obviously, if you see a ghost, you're gonna scream. So the drunk dude started screaming and shouting and saying, "You are dead. You're not supposed to be here." Okay, the boy also ran back to his grandmother's house. He didn't give up though. The next night again, he decided to try again and go home. Along the way, he sees another man. So he approaches this guy and he decides, he asks this guy for help. Tells the guy that he's trying to get home. He doesn't know where home is. Fortunately, the guy he's asking for help from, he doesn't know that he's talking to a ghost. So he feels sympathy for this kid, because he feels like he looks like he just got mugged and beaten up. So the boy tells the man his surname, and then fortunately enough, the man knew where that family lived. He took that boy home. When he got home, he did recognize his house. Thank you to the man. The man went on his merry way. The boy jumped over the fence into his home. The front door was locked. He walked around the back, knocked on his mother's window, called out for his mother's name, called out for his mother, asked her to open because he is hungry. Tells her to open, he's hungry, but the mother doesn't reply. I assume maybe the mother is scared. But then the sister comes to the window. She doesn't open the window, and she doesn't even open the curtain. She speaks to the brother through the window, asking a lot of questions. The guy is frustrated, he's hungry, so he just broke the window and left out of anger. He went back to his grandmother's house. But this time around, he knew his way home. So the next night again, he went home. This time he didn't need to ask anybody for directions or whatever. He just went straight home. Although each time he goes home, the road is still a little bit oozy, like he still gets lost. Can't really understand how, because he was just there yesterday, but then it's so difficult to get there, but he manages to navigate his way through and then get home. Okay, he gets home. This time around, he doesn't knock or whatever. He just gets in through the window and he eats all the leftover food. As he is eating the leftover food, His nephew comes through and joins him. It's just a kid. Kids are not even scared. They are not even familiar with the concept of ghosts and whatnot, right? It's his sister's kid. They're chilling. He eats. After eating, he chills with the kid, plays with the kid until it is time to go back home to his grandmother's house before his grandmother and aunt get there before he does. So this routine goes on for a while. He goes home through a window and then he eats, plays with the nephew. This other time, he's at his grandmother's house. He feels like something is compelling him to go home. Like he feels the urge. It's as if like something, like he has a burning desire to just go home. Okay, fine. He goes home. This time around, it's not just his nephew waiting for him. His whole family is waiting for him. As they are waiting there, they even prepared food for him. He does as usual. He eats, they communicate, they talk to him, and he explains everything as to where he has been, what happened from the moment he saw his mother crying right next to his body. Only to find that since he's been visiting his home, the family consulted, and the Sangoma they consulted explained that the person visiting you is your son. He's not exactly dead. He has been turned into a Tokoloshie, or rather a zombie. All right. So he's there eating, chilling with the family this time around. It's not just the nephew. But then he knows that he has to get back to his grandmother's house before his grandmother arrives with the aunt, or else he's going to get a beating. But then this time around, when he tries to get out of his house, he can't get out of his house, just as remember when he wanted to get out of his grandmother's room but couldn't. Okay, he's trying to get out of his house to go back to his grandmother's house before his grandmother comes back. But he can't. Something is keeping him in there. Again, it's like he's not in control of his own body. And then while he's there feeling captured, a man starts performing a ritual in there right there and then. They're performing a ritual, whatever they're doing, chanting, whatever things they're chanting and burning, whatever things they're burning. So this guy says he starts feeling like the feeling he felt when he was dying, when he got stabbed 7 times. He started feeling like that. The pain and everything is like he's reliving that moment all over again. He asked the man to stop, but he doesn't stop. And then he passes out. When he wakes up, he finds that he's in a car with his brother and mother and 3 strangers, including the man who was performing a ritual on him. Okay, they are driving. He's trying to talk, but then he can't talk. They take him to a river, perform another ritual. This time, the ritual that they're performing, they're calling out his name, calling out his name, calling out his name. But then, when he's supposed to answer, he can't. It's like something is just compelling him not to answer. Like he can't bring himself to answer to the callings of his name. Mind you, it's in the middle of the night when they're performing these rituals, right? So at the break of dawn, they had to stop. Okay, fine. They restrain the guy because if they don't restrain him, he's gonna feel compelled to go back to his grandmother's house. Okay, they restrain him during the day until it is night again, and then they perform the same ritual at the river. They perform the ritual again. They call out his name, call out his name, call out his name. He wants to answer, but then he can't. Something is preventing him from answering when that man who's performing a ritual is calling out his name. Mind you, he trusts this man now because this man is with his mother and brother. I guess you can just tell that they're trying to help, but then something is holding him back from answering their calls, you know. Again, it was the break of dawn. Like this, whatever thing is preventing him from answering the calls of his name, it's like telling him to just hold on until the break of dawn. Just stay strong. Don't answer. Don't answer. Okay, I think they tried 2 times. The the third time, he finally gathered enough strength to answer when they were calling out his name during this ritual. They called out his name, and then when he answered, finally he spoke. And when he answered, that's when he actually came back from them. That's when he broke free from his grandmother's hold and his aunt's hold. When he finally broke free from the chains that were binding him to his grandmother and his grandmother's house and his aunt, the guy that was performing the ritual, he passed out into the river. They had to drag him out of the river. Okay. Now that the guy is conscious, is himself, he's fine now. They managed to get him back. They broke him free from the hellhole that he has been held against his will. He tells them everything, even about how his father, who died when he was 17, is there in the grandmother's house along with his sister and everybody, like a whole lot of people, which he doesn't even recognize those people. Okay. After talking and everything, they gave him food. They told him that he has to stay there until he fully recovered. He stayed there at the Sangoma's place, which is not far from the river where they were performing the ritual. But then they told him that they have to go and get revenge for what has happened to him, his father, and his sister. Fine, they left. He was left at the care of the Sangoma's, I think, subordinates or trussers, people he mentors. When they came back after 4 days, they told him that it is done. They got revenge against the people that made him suffer and put his family through hell. They didn't go into detail about how they actually did it. Sorry, yeah, they didn't go into detail about it. Okay, so now that everything is fine, they got their son back, it's time to discuss next steps. They tell him that the time he was held against his own will at his grandmother's house, there were times when he was attempting to get home and kept getting lost. So everybody kept seeing him when he was walking around trying to get home. But whenever they tried to talk to him, he would run or hide. He never really responded. So uh, apparently at the village, everybody knows about him. There's a big rumor that there's a ghost there, and of course they're referring to him as the ghost. So they decided that it's not really safe for him to go back home to his village in Mpumalanga. Instead, uh, he had to start afresh, start a new life away from Mpumalanga, away from South Africa. That's when he moved to Mozambique. I assume he got to Mozambique through the Sangoma, because Sangomas, they know these things. They network with each other. I think, probably knows another Sangoma in Mozambique and said, I've got an issue with this client of mine who faced this and this. Can you set him up there? So yeah, he ended up in Mozambique. But then still, his new life, there was a problem. He started moving around countries, from one country to another: Mozambique, Lesotho, Zimbabwe, Botswana, and so on, illegally though, because he doesn't have traveling documents. So he said he got to Lesotho and he tried to enroll at school. But then, as they punched his name on the system, they found that he's deceased in South Africa. So he can't really get a good job. And also he can't go to school because the systems just keep showing that he's deceased. So what he does is that he moves around doing odd jobs here and there. And he even has a 3-year-old now. But then since he moves around from country to country, he says that every year, twice a year, he goes to Mozambique, which is where his family comes to visit. So that's why I said I think maybe the Sangoma who helped him break free from his grandmother is the one who set it up, so that he can be okay. And then the starting point where they started, that's where the family goes to visit him and see him twice a year. So yeah, that's it for today. I'm gonna be sharing more stories. There's a whole lot of stories that I received on my WhatsApp line. You can also check out the channel's description if you want to send me a story so that we can share it on the channel. Until then, don't forget to share, like, and subscribe.